10, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Beef industry shaken by a new ban tonight. Louise is told she'll not be home for Christmas. Spencer marriage finally ended in just 6 minutes. And arise Sir Pele, football's shining knight. Good evening. Confidence in British beef took another battering today with a new safety scare and a new ban. Sales of all cuts sold on the bone, like T-bone steaks, will be outlawed in the next few days. It's because of evidence that bones can harbor mad cow disease, which is now linked with the human brain disease CJD. The risk is said to be very small, but the government said consumers had to be given the highest protection possible. Our political editor, Michael Brunston, reports.
Just as consumer confidence in beef has returned, a new problem. Ministers still insist it's safe, but as a result of a slight new risk, tonight's shoppers will soon no longer be able to buy it on the bone. In their latest report, the government's advisors say that the new source of infection might be present in just 3 infected animals, which they think might get into the human food chain next year. In the past, it was thousands a year. And the risk of 1 extra person getting the brain disease CJD as a result is put at only 5%. But even that risk is apparently too high for the government.
The best way to ensure the credibility of beef is to demonstrate beyond doubt that whatever action is necessary to ensure that the beef is safe is taken.
Just before confirmation of the news, this reaction from the Conservative leader, William Hague.
Provided they act sensibly on the best scientific advice available, then they will have our support. But of course it does mean that businesses have got to be properly compensated.
But in the Commons, a Conservative backbencher expressed his anger at Dr. Cunningham's decision.
What he's really doing in what he's describing as a precautionary measure is in fact a panic measure.
The Liberal Democrats fear for the effect on the beef industry.
It would not be an exaggeration to say that it is another desperate morale blow for the beef sector.
But contrary to that view inside the Commons, the farmers' leader speaking outside was more positive.
I believe that it should give added confidence to the consumer that nothing could possibly be wrong. Every animal in the British beef chain is under 30 months of age, and British beef, I believe, therefore, is the best in the world.
This whole problem began in 1986, when BSE was first identified in cattle here. It was a full 10 years later that a possible link between BSE and the human brain disease CJD was announced. The same month, Europe imposed a worldwide ban on British beef sales. As part of measures to eradicate the disease, the selective culling of British cattle began 2 months later. And in June this year, measures already in place for cattle were extended to include sheep and goats. Which raises the question, when will BSE be completely eliminated in this country? The answer from Dr. Cunningham tonight, not until the year 2001. But in the meantime, and given the way that Labour has criticised the Conservatives for their handling of the whole BSE crisis, this government is not prepared to take even the slightest of risks. Michael Brunston, News at 10, Westminster.
So just what is the new scientific evidence against beef on the bone, and what cuts and what sort of risk are we talking about? Here's our science editor, Lawrence McGinty.
Scientists have been deliberately infecting cattle with BSE in an ongoing experiment. Cattle are slaughtered every 4 months, and 47 different parts of the carcass are tested on mice to see if they can pass on BSE. It's these experiments which show 2 parts, previously thought safe, might be infective.
We calculate that the risk is very small. It's only in animals that are not yet showing any signs of the disease, are under 30 months, but are towards the end of the incubation period of the disease that would pose any threat. We calculate there will only be about 3 such animals in the 2.2 million slaughtered for human food in 1998.
It's been known for some time that the agent which causes BSE is found in the cow's brain and spinal column. Now there's new evidence that it may possibly be found in marrow inside the bones of cows older than 30 months. And inside the backbone, the BSE agent may also be found in natural swellings, called ganglia, of the nerves that connect to the spinal cord. These are inside the bony spine and aren't normally eaten. But when butchers make a T-bone steak, they may cut through those swellings and spread the BSE agent. Similarly with sirloin steaks. And when a joint like beef ribs is cooked, juices from the nerve swellings may spread the BSE agent. The spinal cord of cattle is removed in the abattoir, but those ganglia in the backbone aren't. That's why the government now wants all meat to be sold off the bone. But critics say more sensitive tests could show other tissues are infected.
A risk has been taken. And how much extra risk is it by continuing to eat those tissues? And probably we've taken the vast majority of the risk already. Although we might find more infectivity later, we've really eaten it by now.
Well, tests, I think, so far have failed to reveal any infection from meat itself. But it has to be said that nerves, which principally carry the infectious agent, do innervate and penetrate meat. So I think that there is just a possibility that meat could carry a very small dose of infection. But at the moment, no evidence for that.
What's emerging is that tissues other than meat might be infective. But even if they are, the risks of actually being infected look very small. Lawrence McGuinty, News at 10.
The new ban is a body blow to beef farmers whose incomes have already slumped. Some were talking today of selling up and getting out of farming. And what about consumers? Will the new scare drive beef right off the menu? This report by ITN's Penny Marshall.
Today, retailers began sweeping boned meat off their shelves, and consumers once again began assessing the risks of buying beef. The Consumers Association said, given the dangers, however small, today's ban was necessary.
The evidence seems to suggest that BSE infectivity is now appearing in parts of the animal that they previously thought it couldn't appear in. That seems to us to be a reason for the government to exercise caution.
By this afternoon, all the major supermarket chains had removed boned meat from display. Most will have replaced these products with boneless cuts by the weekend. For smaller retailers, though, like this Nottinghamshire butcher, the timing of the ban at the traditional Christmas boom period has hit hard.
It's certainly not going to help after all the things what's happened in the past 18 months or so. I just hope that this is the end of it and, you know, we're going to get back to normal, because basically we're all fed up with it.
Fed up with it too are these 2,000 Welsh farmers gathered to protest at a succession of bans they fear will bring their industry to its knees. Beef sales slumped a third after the BSE scare last year. Farmers say they're just recovering. But cheap imports and today's ban have fueled their anger to breaking point.
They're absolutely livid. Absolutely, they're here and they want action tonight.
No future environment, is it? I know where it's going.
We've got the safest beef in Europe and there's no sign of no export ban. We lifted nothing.
Tonight in London, as some consumer pressure groups complained the ban didn't go far enough, veteran meat eaters at this steakhouse were outraged.
I think people should be allowed to eat what they require and not what this government decides.
My view is I think it's all a bit of a scare and I'm going to carry on eating it.
The government says these measures have been taken to provide consumers with the highest possible protection against the risks of BSE. But the fear tonight amongst beef producers is that these measures will only undermine their industry further. Penny Marshall, News at 10, Central London.
And our science editor Lawrence McGuinty is here again now in the studio. Lawrence, why has this new evidence taken so very long to emerge?
I think it's because, Trevor, these experiments are very difficult to do, and they take a long time. First of all, you have to infect the cattle, and that can take 3 years for the disease to show. Then you have to infect the mice to find out which parts of the cattle are infected, and that can take 2 years as well. So a single experiment here can take 5 years before you know whether meat or blood or brain or spinal cord is infective or not.
Well, we heard some of the reaction there from some people in Penny Marshall's report. Is this the last scare, or might we hear other things about beef, other parts of the cattle which are just not edible?
Well, I think what's happening is as these experiments produce more and more results, then I think it's at least possible that we might find other parts. Blood is the one that everyone is really worried about, that if blood was infective, then that might be a big problem. But what seems to be happening is that even if we're finding other parts that are infective, then the infectivity is very small. And you need a dose of this stuff. You need a big dose before you develop any kind of disease. And so it's possible that there might be new scares, but I think they'll be like this one. The additional risk over what we've already taken by eating beef is going to be very, very tiny. And do remember, there are only 30 cases of CJD in the last 3 years that might be related to beef. It's not yet an epidemic.
But what you're saying is that this is not the last?
I doubt it, I doubt it.
Lawrence McGuinty, thank you. And now today's other news, starting with Louise Woodward's appearance in court in America today. The British au pair could have been ordered back to jail. She could have been freed to be home for Christmas. In the event, neither happened. She has to wait now for a full hearing in March, and in the meantime, she must stay in Massachusetts. ITN's James Mates reports now from Boston.
She has lived for almost a month as a free woman in the city of Boston, but has been forbidden to leave the state of Massachusetts. Neither side are happy with this. The prosecution want her back in jail. The defense would like to see her home in England. But few observers expected the court to change anything this morning, and certainly Louise Woodward herself looked supremely unconcerned as she chatted with her lawyers in the courtroom. The judge, Justice Ruth Abrahams, didn't even want to hear legal arguments, instead ordering the full appeal hearing to be held in just 4 months' time.
The probable date for the appeal is March. Do the counsel have any questions concerning the appellate procedures?
Your Honor, the only issue remaining, I believe, would be the status of the defendant.
That is going to the full court.
Which means no change for now. She's still free, but won't be home for Christmas.
We'd obviously prefer to see Louise have an opportunity to go home for the holidays. There is no question that Louise would return, but we'll have to review that.
The fact that she remains outside of custody is a concern of ours, but in no way dampens the victory we got today.
An appeal case would normally take at least a year to be heard. This one will be in court in just a few months. But all that time, Louise Woodward will know that the Supreme Court has the power to reinstate her original murder conviction and send her back to jail to serve a life sentence. James Mates, News at 10, Boston.
The details of what Earl Spencer's divorce will cost him came out today. He's to give the Countess just over £1.8 million in cash and a house in South Africa, and he'll meet all the costs of bringing up their children. The Earl and the Countess each gave an undertaking which binds them to secrecy about their private lives. ITN's John Irvine was in Cape Town to see the divorce finalised.
This afternoon, Earl Spencer finally took the witness stand, not to answer questions about alleged infidelity, but to confirm that his marriage was over. He told the court that he and his wife had been separated for over 3 years, and there was no hope of a reconciliation. The judge told him he was glad that the settlement had been reached. It's clear that Earl Spencer was forced into improving his original settlement offer considerably. By doing so, he secured a divorce and brought this embarrassing courtroom episode to an end. Before the settlement, the Earl offered the Countess a one-off payment of £300,000, a monthly income of £2,500, plus a house in Cape Town, a car and medical insurance. Today's settlement gives the Countess a lump sum of almost £2 million, plus the house, the car and the medical insurance. Lady Spencer, pictured here at the height of last week's court battle, was said to be greatly relieved it was all over. She has spent the day at the £250,000 house she now owns. There was no requirement for her to attend today's hearing. Earl Spencer left the court a single man. After 8 years of marriage, his divorce had gone through in 5 minutes. Stay in South Africa for the foreseeable future, sir? He was making no comment. The Earl and Countess came to Cape Town 2 years ago. They have lived separate lives, but both are known to enjoy the relaxed lifestyle here. They have each formed new relationships. In their settlement, they have agreed never to reveal details of the divorce proceedings. The scathing courtroom allegations have been withdrawn. It's clear both wish to forget the last 2 weeks and to get on with life in this beautiful corner of the world. John Irvine, News at 10, Cape Town.
A former boy soldier who did 25 years in jail for murder was cleared and set free by the Court of Appeal today. Andrew Evans had confessed to killing a teenage girl after he had dreams in which he saw her face. But there was no other evidence against him, and the judges said today the confession was unreliable. ITN's Joe Andrews has the full story.
Andrew Evans free after a quarter of a century behind bars, the victim of the longest miscarriage of justice in recent times.
This verdict means that my long nightmare is finally over. For more than 25 years I've been held responsible for a crime I did not commit. I will always be in debt to those who fought to bring me justice.
He's been in jail since he was 17, after confessing to the murder of a 14-year-old schoolgirl, Judith Roberts, whose body was found near Tamworth in Staffordshire. At the time, Evans was about to be discharged from this nearby army camp, suffering something close to a nervous breakdown. He later dreamt about the murder and walked into this police station in Stoke-on-Trent. After 3 days of questioning, he became convinced he was the murderer.
He started to believe he had done it and then started to fit in with that scenario. There's no doubt he was very determined to try to persuade the police he had been involved.
It was only after more than 20 years in jail that Evans came to believe he was innocent.
Emotionally, it's been horrific. On an intellectual level, it's made me a stronger person. But on an emotional level, I'm basically a cripple.
The judges said they found this an extremely difficult and anxious appeal to resolve, but they accepted that Andrew Evans's confessions were entirely unreliable and so quashed his conviction. Jo Andrews, News at 10 at the High Court.
The Prime Minister ordered a moratorium today on the building of gas-fired power stations because of the growing threat to jobs in the coal industry. It followed a warning by one of the biggest coal producers, RJB Mining, that 5,000 jobs could be lost by Christmas. 71 women who had cervical smears at a hospital in Reading 5 years ago are being called back for repeat tests. It follows the discovery that a woman who had been given the all clear at the Royal Berkshire Hospital later developed cancer. And Royal Opera House chiefs refused to resign today despite damning criticism of their performance by MPs. The decision was backed by the Culture Secretary, Chris Smith, and he rejected calls to end the Opera House's public subsidy. Thousands of firefighters have again been battling the bushfires in Australia. A change in the weather today brought some relief to Sydney, but the New South Wales Emergency Services Minister said the crisis was nowhere near ended. Our foreign news correspondent Paul Davis is there.
Tens of thousands of people are breathing a sigh of relief and thanking nature for stopping the inferno just as it seemed set to sweep through Sydney's suburbs.
A strong southerly wind seemed to come from nowhere, stopping the fire in its tracks, but not before it had burnt its way through this modern housing estate in the Menai suburb of southern Sydney. There'd been no time to pack. Families are now returning to discover their homes and possessions were consumed in the fire's last hours.
We only got what we've got on our bag. We went, there's nothing. We've got nothing now. All the kids' baby photos, videos, wedding photos, everything. Nothing. I'm going to start from scratch again.
We'll shed a few tears over the next few weeks and all, but there's not much we can do about it. It's something that's happened.
Such was the random nature of the blaze. Some buildings survived almost untouched in the middle of the devastation.
You know, the damage that we have is nothing compared to, you know, most of the people up the street here, you know. Like Greg and Michelle and Mandy and Paul and that, their house just destroyed, and we're just so lucky, really, you know.
At one stage, 200 separate bushfires were burning. The largest, a wall of flame more than 100 miles long, is still being fanned through scrubland to the west of Sydney, defying all attempts to halt its advance towards outlying towns and settlements.
While Sydney appears to be out of danger, dozens of small communities to the west of here are still nervously watching the weather, waiting to see if the winds will continue blowing that wall of flame in their direction. Paul Davis, News at 10, Sydney.
The Football World Cup in France kicks off in a sense tomorrow. That's when the draw is made for the first round of next summer's competition. England and Scotland are both unseeded, so they could be pitted against each other. Our sports correspondent Graham Miller is in Marseille to set the scene.
France is preparing itself for the World Cup. The Velodrome, right in the heart of Marseille, the country's oldest city, is almost ready for tomorrow's final draw. Tens of millions will watch on worldwide television. Locally, 38,000 will pack inside. Among them, England coach Glenn Hoddle, who arrived this afternoon, and Craig Brown, the Scotland manager, who joined him on the flight from London. The group draw will try and separate the European countries, but England v Scotland is still a possibility.
I was very surprised in Euro 96 when the draw put us together. I thought they would have tried to organise it to separate us, and I thought the same coming here, but quite clearly there is the possibility that we could play each other.
I'd like Scotland and ourselves to do obviously very well, and I think if we can stay clear of each other, it would be nice for Scotland and for British football that we both continue through the group.
Whatever the draw decides, some of England's finest are confident of a good summer to come.
We're here, we've got a good team, we've got good young players. It looks good for a good while.
Tomorrow, the eyes of the world will be on the Velodrome Stadium for the World Cup draw. It'll be a long and complicated affair, at the end of which Brazil, the holders, will hand over the Jules Rimet trophy to the French Football Federation, and then the final countdown to France '98 will begin. And tonight, with 188 days to go, a fireworks display to herald the celebration of football. Graham Miller, News at 10, Marseille.
On the field, West Ham continued their impressive run of home form tonight with a convincing win over Crystal Palace. The match had to be abandoned 2 weeks ago after the floodlights failed, and John Hartson got quickly to work, a powerful drive producing his 17th goal of the season. Palace quickly replied, Neil Shipley bundling in from close range. But West Ham took control in the second half, David Unsworth scoring his first goal since his move from Everton with a fine volley. Steve Lomas finished the job with another volley near the end. The final score, West Ham 4, Crystal Palace 1. And the numbers drawn in tonight's National Lottery were 1, 8, 36, 39, 47 and 49. The bonus number was 37. Camelot say no one won the estimated jackpot prize of £4,200,000. The main headlines again tonight. The government's announced a ban on all cuts of beef sold on the bone. It's because of evidence that bone can harbour mad cow disease, which is now linked with the human brain disease CJD. Experts say the risk is very small, but consumers had to be given the highest protection possible. And a Boston court has ruled that the British au pair Louise Woodward must stay in America until her appeal in March. And finally, Pele, the man rated the greatest footballer of all time, was awarded an honorary knighthood by the Queen today. Pele, who is now Brazil's sports minister, also graced the turf of Stamford Bridge. He saw a scheme intended to teach football-mad youngsters not to neglect their schoolwork. John Draper reports.
He's received scores of sporting honours in his life, but today Pele became a knight of the British Empire. He still causes a stir wherever he goes. The greatest footballing legend of all time can't call himself Sir Pele because he's a foreign national, but he was clearly proud of the gong he received from the Queen. It was partly for his work with children, here at a project at Chelsea combining homework and football. He's now Minister for Sport in Brazil and showed diplomatic footwork when asked about England in the World Cup.
England, play very well. They have a good coach now, change your style, qualify very well. But in this tournament, it's very hard to say who's going to win because it's a tough tournament. I wish Brazil be in the final.
The youngsters at Chelsea put on a display for the old soccer veteran who's still clearly most at home on a football pitch. He's interested in taking this scheme to Brazil. These days, Pele, KBE, signs footballs. In his career, he put more than 1,000 in the back of the net. He was recently voted best footballer of all time and hasn't lost any of his enthusiasm for the game. John Draper, News at 10.
That's News at 10 tonight. We're back tomorrow. From all of us here at ITN, good night.
Hello and good evening. Now, for many western parts of the country, it's been a bright, sunny day. However, we have seen this area of cloud pushing down from the North Sea, bringing showers of rain, sleet and snow to the eastern side of Britain. We've also seen those icy, cold northerly winds feeding around this area of high pressure, the same high that again tonight brings problems from both frost and fog as temperatures plummet down to -5°C, a very wintry scene in the offing, with more sleety showers around the coasts and one batch of them moving down towards the West Country. Now, as that happens, we'll see patches of both ice and freezing fog. Again, take extra special care if you're going to be on the roads at all. Tomorrow starts on a bright note, though, for most of us. Again, we've got those sleety showers near to the coasts, and some of that fog could take the best part of the morning to clear away. Now we'll see the cloud building up in the far north of Scotland through the day, and that's going to bring more in the way of snow to the Scottish Highlands for a time. But for most of us, though, a bright, dry day as those showers become confined to the far southeast corner of England. A cold day as well, 4 or 5 at best inland, a slightly milder 7 or 8 nearer to the coasts. Good night, here's a summary.
Power gen, generating electricity whatever the weather.
Good evening, I'm Katie Haswell. This is London Tonight. The RSPCA today banned any of their dogs from being used by police forces. It comes after an appalling case in Essex that, if it's proved, could raise serious questions about how police train their dogs. Glenn Campbell has this report.
It was Essex Police Dog Unit's proudest moment. February 1994, and 10 puppies bred by the force are introduced to their new handlers. Man and dog united in the fight against crime. But 4 years on, and the dog unit is under investigation, amid claims of police cruelty against the animals on which they depend. This Alsatian, Asa, seen here with his handler, PC Mark Needham, was killed 2 weeks ago during a training course. The police officer was allegedly ordered to kick his dog because he'd become too aggressive. Asa suffered a ruptured liver and bled to death. Today's decision by the RSPCA to stop supplying dogs to all police forces across the country follows a move made last week by the charity's Essex branch.
We view it as an inhumane and outrightly cruel practice.
I can reassure you and the public and your viewers that this inquiry will be thorough. The RSPCA are involved with us in the inquiry, they're party to it, and we will make sure that Essex Police trains its dogs properly in the future.
PC Needham is said to be devastated by the death of Asa. He's been taken off the dog section until the inquiry is completed. In Harlow, this is Glenn Campbell for London Tonight.
There's a major health alert after it emerged that human error could have given women in Reading incorrect smear test results. Berkshire Health Authority revealed that as many as 70 women could be in danger.
They've taken 200 calls since lunchtime from some of the 4,000 women who were given the all clear on cervical smear tests between 1992 and 94 and now are not so sure.
No, your name is not one of the names on our list. That's fine.
At the end of 1994, the Royal Berkshire suspected that one of their lab staff was not getting the right test results. She left her post by mutual consent, but they only checked 10% of her work, technically all they were required to do.
We inevitably did uncover some cases of severely precancerous cells, and those women were recalled and they were appropriately investigated and treated. In fact, none of them turned out to have cancer.
But that was only looking at 10% of her work?
That was 10%, right.
The puzzling thing is that if this screener's work was under question in 1994, why is it now, at the end of 1997, that these women are being called back? Well, since then, more cases have come back to the hospital which throw doubt on this woman's work. Their precancerous conditions having been neglected now for 3 to 4 years. So all those old slides have been re-examined, with the result that 71 women need re-screening and 6 of those need further tests. In Reading, this is Liz Wickham for London Tonight.
And the hospital has set up a helpline. The number is 0800 716 406, and phone lines open from 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Football now, and the London derby between West Ham and Crystal Palace kicked off for the second time tonight. The previous match was abandoned last month due to floodlight failure.
The lights were on this time. None of the Palace team seemed to be at home. West Ham centre-forward John Hartson continued his amazing run of goals at Upton Park last night. Hartson hit his 17th goal of the season in only his 20th game. It came in the 30th minute after Isle Berkovic put the ball into his path and the Welsh international blasted past goalkeeper Kevin Miller. But Palace's Neil Shipley responded by scoring his 5th in 5 matches just before half-time. But just as it looked as if Palace would go into the break level, Berkovic hit West Ham's 2nd with just seconds remaining on the half. Unsworth made it 3-1 for the home side in the 47th minute. On 69 minutes, captain Steve Lomas volleyed home to give West Ham a 4-1 advantage. In the nationwide Division 1, QPR managed a draw with Norwich with this equaliser 12 minutes from time. And in Division 2, Millwall lost 1-0 to Walsall with this. This is Owen Thomas for London Tonight.
That's it. We're back in the morning from 6:10, but until then, have a very good night. Bye-bye.
Carlton weather, sponsored by Sea France, Dover-Calais Ferries.
Hello again. Now, it's been a grey, dull day today. The skies are finally cleared. It's going to make for a brighter day tomorrow, but a really cold night tonight. Temperatures plunging to below freezing, making for another widespread frost, patches of ice and freezing fog to watch out for if you're going to be on the roads at all. Now, tomorrow starts a lot better than today did, so a little bit of sunshine around, but a very cold start. Any mist and fog gradually clearing away. Through the afternoon, once again, we are going to see more in the way of sunshine than we had this afternoon, but we are still going to get the odd flurry of rain or sleet. And that's especially the case out to the eastern side of the region. Now, temperatures faring a little bit better than today, highs of 7. And as we head towards the weekend, more in the way of unsettled weather, but those temperatures climbing up to a milder 10 by Sunday. Good night.
For a more detailed 5-day outlook, call Weather Update, sponsored by Sea France.
Travel Update in association with Business Pages.
Hello, good evening. Busy traffic is expected around Knightsbridge tomorrow as tennis fans head to the Royal Albert Hall for a tennis tournament. Borg, McEnroe, Henman and Ruzetsky are among the many stars playing, and the tournament's on for the next 4 days. Tomorrow evening, the countdown to Christmas begins with the lighting up ceremony of the Christmas tree in Trafalgar Square, so busy traffic in the area. And a major exhibition opens tomorrow at Battersea Power Station, featuring music and various entertainment for the next 19 days. On to roadworks, and the AA warn of rush hour delays on the A10 Great Cambridge Road in Enfield, with restrictions both ways between Lincoln Road and Berry Street. In fact, another 3 months of these works to go. That's it. Good night.
Travel Updates with Business Pages, helping you to work.